Welcome back to our channel. We are BitcoinMagazine.nl and we are coming live from Money 2020. We've been keeping a promise to you that we are going to be sitting down with the most influential people, the people who are genuinely trying to bring the crypto space forward. The people who are changing it, making it better in every way possible. And today we get to sit across from Charles Hoskinson.
It's great to be here. How you been?
I am very good, very good. So you know what to do. Stay tuned, watch this video, share this video, and help us keep making this sort of content. Charles, it's a pleasure to sit here with you today. We had a brief encounter at the Paris Blockchain Week. I actually got to stand and watch you get interviewed, and then we met at the Louvre, and then it was very interesting for me because it was the first time I saw you walk in the crowd, and the way you walk the crowd, it's a great contrast to whenever you see someone of your caliber and your importance for the crypto space walk. You were walking across the people and shaking hands with everybody with a smile on your face.
Oh, I love everybody. It's always a lot of fun.
It made an impact on me because, you know, we've been around to a few conferences and you know the names, and whenever they walk, they don't greet anybody. They walk past everybody, you know, they have 10 security guards around them. So the way that you actually, the reachability made an impact on me. So what are you finding here in Amsterdam?
Well, Money 2020 is always a great event. You know, this is the smaller of the two. I think they have one in Vegas, and then they have the Amsterdam one.
Can you believe it's actually bigger?
I know.
Crazy.
It's just 10,000 people, and it's a small event, which is just crazy. But you know, the Dutch are very friendly. They're very direct and blunt, and I kind of appreciate it like that. I've been dealing with French diplomacy for far too long, so it's nice to go to a place where people say what they mean and mean what they say. You know, just wonderful food. It's easy to get around, and long and rich history here. So Amsterdam always has a very special place in my heart. Overall, the blockchain community is very strong here. You know, I remember when we were founding Ethereum, we were actually looking at either Zurich or Amsterdam as the commercial headquarters of Ethereum. And we chose Zurich, but we actually came here to the Netherlands to vet it because BitPay had their European headquarters right here in Amsterdam. So it's got a long crypto history, well over 10 years, and there's a phenomenal cryptocurrency community here.
Wow. Now, as Dutch as it gets, you got to actually meet Prince Constantine. You know, from to us, he's the people's prince. And tell me, the conversations you had with him, is there something that you could divulge to us that, hey, was he warm to your ideas and the interchange of ideas? How did it go?
The irony is we talked a lot more about synthetic biology and biotechnology, because that's an area that he knows an enormous amount about, than we did cryptocurrencies. But we did have a chance to talk a bit about the cryptocurrency space, and thank you. I think there's a great degree of interest, especially given that the United States is opening up, and we're getting the market structure bill and the Genius Act and other things that are getting passed. And so now that U.S. regulation's pro-crypto, Europe has to reevaluate the MiCA regime and say, well, do we want to make it a little bit less restrictive and more open, or are we comfortable with the way it is? So thought leaders throughout the continent, whether they be here in the Netherlands or they be in France or in Italy or Germany, they're actively reevaluating these types of things, especially with stable coins, yield products, staking, and ultimately what it means to launch a cryptocurrency and run a cryptocurrency business. So I think over the next 3 to 5 years that there are going to be certain hubs that will be in Europe very friendly to the cryptocurrency industry, and absolutely Amsterdam is going to be one of those hubs.
Now, when it comes down to it, and you just mentioned the US, do you see the influence that the US has on the market? For example, yesterday the Dutch government fell. I don't know if you're aware of this. Dutch government fell yesterday, no effect on the market whatsoever. Even the AIX.
The prince was a little peeved about that.
Yes, obviously, and you know why. I mean, you know, if you think about it, it's a bunch of children acting out. I get that, but in comparison, if the US, if something happens in politics there, it affects it greatly. Here, government falls, AIX 1% change. So, what are your thoughts on? Is that effect that the US has on the crypto market, is it healthy for us?
Well, the United States is an empire. You know, we have troops in more than 70 countries. The dollar is the world reserve currency, and in many ways we're a bulwark to stand against other empires like Russia and China. So if the U.S. gets sick, the whole world gets sick. If the U.S. is strong, then, you know, for the people that are inside the Western sphere, then that translates to everybody else. We're also one of the largest consumer economies. So because we have such a prominent role in financial regulation and the running of the international markets, whenever we change our regulation, like a great example is Sarbanes-Oxley after the collapse of Enron. Literally the day after we passed it, the Australians passed it, the UK passed it, other people did it, and people forget how quickly US regulation percolates through. So we are used to, as US people, an outsized influence, and we tend to forget that politics has historically been regional for many people. You know, if a government collapses, oh, who cares? You know, but Europe is going through a big change right now. You know, the Europeans are realizing that the U.S. is no longer going to be solely invested in their security, and so now you see Germany remilitarizing, for example, and discussions about what is the role of NATO in the coming years. Europeans are also starting to say, well, perhaps instead of just solely trading with the U.S., maybe we take a more neutral view and talk to China and these other people, and Europe has a different geopolitical role. And that's probably healthy, given that it's been one way for 70 years, and as an American, it's benefited us tremendously, but the Europeans perhaps not so much. And cryptocurrencies are the exact same way. Europe is a large enough economic bloc to have its own opinion on how to integrate these types of markets. And the tendency that Europe has is to over-regulate, but what we've learned from over-regulation or an adversarial view is that first it doesn't stop crypto. Under the Biden regime, he sued everybody and went after everybody. We're a $3 trillion ecosystem, so that doesn't really work. So you have to choose a different approach. And my hope is that innovators here will find a more reasonable approach that is interoperable with the Middle East standard like Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and also interoperable with the US standard. And then ultimately we can create one global marketplace where things can trade 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Okay. Now, based specifically on what you said, creating that global marketplace, where do you position yourself? Where do you position Cardano? Where do you see yourself fitting into that whole as a unit, or as a leading voice, as a leading partner? Where do you guys fall?
Well, there's two large macro trends that Cardano is at the nexus of. One of them is Bitcoin DeFi. So when we look at the DeFi markets, it's mostly a Solana, Ethereum, SWI, this type of a circle, and we have a little bit of DeFi, and others do as well, but that's really where the center of gravity is. And for the last 5-10 years, what people have been doing is saying, oh, well, how do we be like them and poach their customers and do these things? Meanwhile, it's like this giant sleeping monstrosity, Bitcoin, and it's much, much larger. In fact, the DeFi opportunity there with Bitcoin is about 4 times larger than the entire market cap of Solana and Ethereum combined. And it's almost like Europe fighting wars amongst each other and then discovering North America and saying, oh my God, there's this huge continent that's somewhere else. So Bitcoin is coming online, and Bitcoin DeFi is going to be huge thanks to Taproot. So one of the things that Cardano has working for it is very close to Bitcoin in terms of its technology and design. They're UTXO, we're extended UTXO. Our proof of stake was based upon Bitcoin proof of work, which is a very different type of proof of stake than the proof of stake that Ethereum has. So we're working really diligently as an ecosystem to kind of be the computation DeFi layer of the Bitcoin ecosystem. Because we allow for Bitcoiners to pay their transaction fees in Bitcoin, get their yield in Bitcoin, even if they're operating on the Cardano network, which is a unique thing to Cardano, and it gives us a unique competitive advantage. The other big macro trend is the privacy and identity trend. So when you look at regulated business, every regulated business, every real world business for that matter, it has a private side and a public side. You could be running McDonald's, and the amount of money in the cash register is private, and your HR stuff is private. So it doesn't matter if you're running a secret agency or you're running a fast food restaurant, there's a balance of these things. And right now, blockchains only do the public side. And so what that translates to is that all that private stuff is off-chain, typically centralized. So when you do real-world business, you collapse your blockchain application to a centralized offering. So by having private blockchains, what you're doing is you're opening up that conversation of how do we do the private side but decentralized. And so we have a product called Midnight that's coming out in the Cardano ecosystem to airdrop later this year to 37 million people, and it's going to be Bitcoin and Ethereum and Solana and Cardano and all these other places, XRP and BNB. And what that does is it says, hang on a second here, we're now in a situation where we don't care where your DApp is, where your customer is. We can offer a service that's like a hybrid application to many different chains at the same time. So those two macro trends, I think, is going to put Cardano at the forefront of kind of where all the TVL's coming over the next 5 years, and the forefront of also the real-world asset revolution. So security tokens, regulated products, a lot of these yield products that are coming from the traditional financial world into that. And that's distinctly different from where SWI and Aptos and Ethereum and Solana are at, where they're fighting over strictly a Web3 economy, and there's that moving water from one side of the bathtub to the other side.
A little small circle fighting between themselves.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, it's a multi-$100 billion circle, so I mean, we should all be lucky to be so small. But compared to your point, to the global markets, it is quite small.
Yeah.
Like gold is a $10 trillion market. It's not even the largest market in the global markets.
Now, right now, we're at Money 2020. There is a big divide between traditional and DeFi, TradFi, DeFi, but we see, especially since we were invited here, think about it, Bitcoin Magazine at Money 2020 means that gap is closing. You're a speaker at Money 2020. How do you foresee the next 2 or 3 years when it comes to the mix of TradFi and DeFi? Do you foresee them coming together and becoming one seamless integration?
Yeah, it's going to be no longer TradFi and DeFi, it's just Fi. And really, we're getting to a point where there's interoperability amongst all the different protocols, and there's interoperability amongst all the different standards. And you see that with the open banking initiative and these consortium chains like Onyx. I believe Google's working on one as well. There's dozens of people in the Mag 7 or in the big financial groups that they're starting to build infrastructure where it's very obvious for me as a technologist how I would write software to talk to their software and move assets and value from their system to our system and back. So interoperability is coming, and we're almost getting like a finance Wi-Fi moment.
Yeah.
For a very long time, it was just all these silos that were either from companies or nation states, and everything was just locked up, and then there would be these middlemen that act as liquidity points between the silos, and they make fabulous money, but they produce nothing. They just move value between people. And now when the cryptocurrency protocols are coming, the big lesson for the TradFi world is we need protocols, and we need interoperability. We need the ability in a trustless way to be able to move value between the different systems. So for a long time there were regulatory burdens, but what the world is realizing is that they serve no geopolitical or commercial purpose. They were just hurting everybody.
Yep.
And so over the next 5-10 years, we're going to see more innovation in the financial space. Everything from automated compliance to new financial products to basically T0 style settlement to really low cost transactions regardless of where people come from, to a reimagining of identity and credit. And all of those things are universal, so they'll be standards driven. So it doesn't really matter if they start in JP Morgan, they can end up in Ethereum or end up in Cardano or other places, which is another reason why privacy is so important, because as you add a compliance regime into regulated transactions, how do you handle the compliance information and not expose all of that to all the people? Nobody's really comfortable with this idea that everything you buy is tracked forever and known forever by everybody in the entire world. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we need to kind of take that back. So it's a very exciting and very fertile time, and this is the first time where I was able to go to Money 2020 and people are like, oh yeah, we like crypto, we get crypto. It used to be like crypto's evil and crypto's nothing but criminals or these types of things.
They would never let us in.
They would never let us in. Now it's like, okay, yeah, crypto's probably the future. We got to get on that crypto train.
Exactly. Now, Midnight. You just mentioned it. We actually had an interview with someone from Midnight, the Paris blockchain. We have an interview with them today as well.
Yeah.
So when it comes down to Midnight, do you see Midnight as, let me use the word, a danger to the institutions who like to have everything visible?
No, I don't think so, because it has selective disclosure. So privacy and identity go hand in glove. Even when you look at a totally private system like Monero, which is just upgrading these full chain membership proofs, and it's a very innovative community, or Zcash, you still have a disclosure regime. It's disclosure of one, it's you.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you have to see your own balance of your wallet. So you're always disclosing to people, you're always talking to people, and what Midnight gives you the ability to do is look at this like a programmable concern. So you write a smart contract and you embed in the smart contract identity keys, and then you decide, well, who gets to see this? Is it just me, or is it me and my company, my HR division, my auditor, the regulator, what have you? And what's really cool is when you start talking this way, then you can start figuring out, okay, how do we create a global regime where a regulated business is able to do business, but at the same time you protect consumers' rights and you protect consumer privacy. And in many cases, you get a massive improvement of privacy than the conventional system. Because almost always when you look at compliance, they're not asking, is it Rodolfo, or is it Charles, or is it Mark or Bill? What they're asking is, do I have the right to do business with you? Yeah. Are you from the right country? Are you at the right age? Are you an accredited investor or non-accredited?
Should they
trust you? Or not? your credit score, these types of things.
Exactly.
I don't need to know your name. I don't need to know your ethnicity. I don't need to know what language you speak. You know, I just need to know, is this a suitable transaction or not? And that's a zero knowledge proof at the end of the day. It's true or false. It's a game of 21 questions. So when you start stacking DIDs with the non-creds and you start automating KYC and AML, ultimately what you do is you start moving to a world where settlement is compliance.
Yes.
You send the transaction, and if it settles, you're in full compliance.
Done.
And the only thing you have as the regulated financial institution, instead of having all the KYC data, is you have proofs. That's it. You don't know who that is, you don't know what it ties back to, and you end up getting a significantly safer, and you end up getting a significantly more robust system. People forget the global cost of compliance is $500 billion a year. You could buy Tokyo every 3 years to give you a sense of how expensive compliance is. It's so crazy. No bank wants this. No CEO of a large financial institution wants to let their compliance desk basically run the organization. That's currently where we're at. And that works only when you have like siloed nation states, but how does that work when you have a global marketplace? And people are in 60 countries, 70 countries and trading with each other. Like I can make a Bitcoin transaction that's in every country at the same time.
Exactly.
So it's always illegal. You know, so you need a different regulatory regime, and that's really what Midnight is doing. Is it's a meta currency, so it allows you to write hybrid applications. So you can write Ethereum in Midnight or Solana in Midnight. You pay in the cryptocurrencies that you want. So you can pay in Ether or Sol or ADA or Bitcoin or what have you. And then you have a private smart contract stack, and you decide what's public and what's private. You're in the driver's seat of that. There's no like escrow keys at the base level or anything like that. It's a totally private system at the base level. But then you embed into your smart contract whatever disclosure regime you want. And then what we can do is build case studies. So we say, this is how you do medical records, and this is how you do a private stable coin, or this is how you do a private supply chain, or this is how you do a private real estate system, or intellectual property. Like we work with a lot of musicians and artists, and let's say Snoop Dogg, he wants to license the IP of Death Row.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't want the world knowing that this guy pays 8% and this guy pays 12%. That hurts his negotiation leverage if that's a public concern.
Exactly.
So his royalty flow should only be known by him and his accountant and these types of people. So obviously his privacy regime would be one way, whereas if it's a publicly traded company and they have 10K disclosures and these things, maybe they need a public disclosure regime for that type of thing.
And
but
that would work
you
best.
should be in charge of that, you know, not the network.
That makes a lot of sense. I was at Consensus in Hong Kong and I spoke to Adam Beck. And I made a mistake. Now I know I made the mistake of telling him today the market was very volatile, and the market was volatile today. It went from 97 to 94, and his answer was, that's not volatility. The market drops by 30%, 40%, that's volatility. 2-3% is a blip. How do you see it in that same way?
Well, volatility is directly connected to the available liquidity and the scale of the asset. And so when you talk about multi-trillion-dollar assets, any given day you're going to have hundreds of millions to billions of dollars of drift in one direction or the other direction. I'm old enough to remember the oil and gas business where oil was $200 a barrel with West Texas Intermediate and these things. Then it went all the way down to like 60 and then down to 35 or something like that. Then it went back up, and the same for natural gas prices. So you'll see in any commodity or currency or security some degree of volatility. It's less about volatility and it's more about structured financial products to trade volatility. So the problem that we had in the early days of cryptocurrencies, we didn't have those options and derivatives and other second order things that gave us the ability to say, okay, I want stability as a business. How do I trade the volatility to somebody else? They take the risk and I pay a premium for that. Well, now that crypto's large enough and regulated financial products have come in, it's very easy to buy a collar. It's very easy to, protect yourself from both the upside and downside of anything. And you just pay maybe an extra 3% or 5% or 10% for that. And then as a business, you can forward project the value of that asset. And in some cases, I was on the winning side of that, made fabulous money. In some cases, I was on the losing side.
All of us.
Lost a hell of a lot of money. I think $2 billion in 1 year, which was just great. But overall, it's getting to a point where, just like the oil and gas business or gold or anything, you can hedge, appropriately. Now, you can't build a currency if you have volatility that's 5, 10, 20, 30% a month. So you do need to do some additional things if you want value stability. So one area that we've done an enormous amount of research in, and as have others like MakerDAO, is algorithmic stablecoins, and how can you take a volatile asset and then peg it to the dollar and then have some sort of over-collateralized reserve,
create balance.
And that creates that balance, and then somebody takes the stability and somebody takes the risky side.
Okay.
And the good news is that enormous progress as an industry has been made there as well. So overall, I don't think too much about it. It used to be, especially in 2017 and 2018 and other things, I mean, when I started Bitcoin, it was under $1, then it went up to $30, then it went down to $4, then it went up to $256, then down to $80, then up to $1,200, then down to $250, then up to $20,000, then down to $4,000, then up to $68,000, then down to $25,000. Now we're at $100,000. So you just, at any given moment, you get these big things. But the macro trend is, linear extrapolation. It's always going up because it's a deflationary asset, and the demand is going up. And if you look at the demand curve, it's not getting any easier. You have, U.S. government becoming a holder with 212,000 Bitcoin. You have big financial institutions like BlackRock and other people getting involved. And when the Fortune 500 start buying after the market structure bill, we're probably going to see $250,000 to $500,000 Bitcoin within the next 24 months. And by the end of the decade, I wouldn't be surprised to see $1 million Bitcoin, which is just absurd. Because I remember when I had my laptop and I was mining blocks of 50 Bitcoin at a time, and the hard drive would go kaput, and I said, it's only 100 Bitcoin or whatever. Who cares?
Yeah, but now everybody do care.
Yeah.
Now, you do a lot of these interviews. You sit down with a lot of people, and my last question for you is, at the end of the day, when these interviews go past, what are the questions that you feel that we as interviewers always miss? What is the one question you're like, hey, you should have asked me this?
Well, I think the big question that people forget to ask and forget to understand is that, the hidden superpower of the cryptocurrency industry is cooperative economics. Okay. We spend so much time in the adversarial side of the economics, like Solana versus Ethereum versus Cardano versus Bitcoin, like who's going to win, which personality is leading us, that people forget that what we do in the cryptocurrency space is we create tokens and incentives that compel people that have never met each other from all over the world to organize and aggregate. Like I remember when Cardano started getting big, we had a group in Nigeria where this one gal was able to pay for her art studio just by selling NFTs on the Cardano network. And then she did this lovely ink drawing of me that she turned into an NFT, and she made more with one NFT sale than she made an entire year working as a hairdresser in Nigeria. And so that's just because of cooperative economics. And so, the question I always wish people would ask is, how do we apply that superpower towards other things? Because when you look at most of the problems in society, whether it be structural inequality or healthcare or global warming or whatever, these are problems of cooperation. It's not a technology problem, and it's not an execution problem. It's like we have plenty of people that are very good at building things and plenty of people that would do hard work. The problem is the incentives are built in a way where they're incentivized to compete with each other or not resolve a problem. And so the big lesson in the cryptocurrency space is we have created 1.4 million cryptocurrencies over the last 15 years as an industry. 94% have failed. Of the 6% that succeeded, they succeeded because they found a way to create ecosystems, and those ecosystems are built upon mutual cooperation without the
value add as well.
And a value add, right. And then what that's done is it's created a group of people that think, well, if I can apply these tokenomics in certain ways, maybe I can solve traffic, or maybe I can solve electricity generation, or whatever the heck it is. And I wish more people would ask questions and ask, like, how do we structure things in a way to cooperate instead of fight each other? And that's what we're trying to do with Midnight when you look at it at its core. We're doing an airdrop to 37 million people, no ICO, no VC, no Ponzinomics. It's just give it away to as many people as possible and build it in a way where people can pay in the cryptocurrencies they choose. So if I don't care if you're Ethereum or a Cardano or whatever, just because it's a partner chain of Cardano, it can still talk to and be a first-class citizen with all these different systems. My hope is that thinking can take over the industry, and then that's going to allow us to take over the TradFi industry, and then by extension take over the world.
That was amazing. This was a masterclass. I sat down here and I learned so much in the half an hour. It was incredible. But my one takeaway is, stop fighting, work together. Let's create a community where we can all communicate with each other and grow together. Charles, it was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
I truly enjoyed it. I hope at some point we'll be able to do this again. And I would like to invite you for the Dutch Blockchain Week. Next year.
When is it?
It's going to be next year. It happened 2 weeks ago, but next year we're going to hold it. I will take contact with your people, and I hope we can get you there. Prince Constantine is going to be there for sure. and hopefully the two of you can share a stage maybe.
Oh, that sounds
and
like a lot of fun.
Exactly, and actually tell us exactly where Cardano is going and what the EU can do to actually foster that adoption as well. I'm looking forward to it. So, share this video, like this video, leave a comment, and we appreciate you taking the time to watch it. And anything that you need, stay tuned to the BitcoinMagazine.nl channel, and we will keep bringing you the most interesting people right here. We were live from Money 2020. See you soon.
Cheers.